The bank manager laughed. She tore the check in half. Right there, in front of everyone. $3 million. Gone. In 2 seconds. The man standing across from her didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. He just watched the pieces fall to the counter. Faded jeans, worn boots, a jacket that had seen better winters. That's all she saw. Not the man, just the clothes. People like you don't belong in my bank, she said. Loud enough for the whole lobby to hear. Loud enough for her to enjoy it. He looked at her. Calm. Too calm. I asked for respect, he said. Not special treatment. She laughed again. Waved for security. 2 guards moved toward him. And that's when the doors opened. A man in a gray suit walked in. Unannounced. Regional director. Here for a routine inspection. He took 1 step inside. Then he saw the man in the work clothes. And he froze. His face went pale. Sir, he said, what happened here? The whole bank went silent. Not a whisper. Not a breath. Just silence. Because in that moment, everyone realized something was very, very wrong. And it wasn't the man in the work clothes. Let's go back. Years before any of this. Before the suit. Before the money. Before the name that made regional directors freeze in. Doorways. There was just a boy. Marcus Reed. Grew up in a small apartment on the edge of a city that didn't care if he made it or not. Lost his father at 9. Lost his mother at 14. Raised himself mostly. Some nights, dinner was whatever was left in the cabinet. Some nights, there was nothing. But his mother had left him one thing. Words. Said to him over and over, like a prayer. Never measure a person's value by what they're wearing, she used to say. Measure it by how they treat people who can do nothing for them. He didn't understand it then. He understood it later. Understood it in ways that would shape the rest of his life. At 16, he got a job sweeping floors at a small investment office downtown. Nobody important. Just a boy with a broom. But there was a man there. Older. Retired banker. Spent his days consulting, mostly out of boredom. His name was Walter Hines. Walter noticed something in Marcus. Not ambition. Not hunger. Patience. The boy watched. Listened. Asked questions nobody his age should have known to ask. So Walter started teaching him. After hours. No pay. Just conversation. Compound interest. Risk tolerance. The difference between a good investment and a good story that sounds like one. Marcus soaked it in like dry ground in a storm. By 19, he'd saved $4,000. Put into the market. Lost half of it in 6 months. Didn't panic. Didn't quit. Just studied harder. By 25, that 4,000 had become 40,000. By 30, it was 4 million. By 40, Marcus Reed controlled one of the largest minority-owned investment firms in the entire region. Billions in assets. Real estate. Small businesses. Community development funds. But here's the thing nobody expected. He never changed. Same faded jeans. Same old jacket. Same quiet voice. His friends told him to buy a new wardrobe. Buy a house that looked like something. Drive a car people would notice. He never did. The moment I start dressing for other people's approval, he told them, I stopped being the person who earned any of this. He kept his mother's words close. Closer than any of the money ever got. And every so often, he'd walk into a business. Alone. Unannounced. Dressed like nobody. Just to see how people were treated when they had nothing to offer. That was the test. The real one. Not what you say when the cameras are rolling. What you do when you think nobody's watching. The morning it happened started like any other. Marcus had a check. $3 million. Not for himself. For a project. Affordable housing. Small business loans. A fund built to help people who grew up exactly like he did. Kids with empty cabinets and no father to teach them anything. He walked into the bank in his usual clothes. Waited in line like everyone else. People stared. Some moved their bags a little closer. Some just watched him out of the corner of their eyes. He didn't react. He never did. When it was finally his turn, he stepped up to the counter. Handed over the check. The manager barely looked at it. Barely looked at him. This can't be real, she said. He said nothing. Just waited. She turned the check over. Studied it like it had personally offended her. Where did you get this? It's mine, Marcus said. For project. If you need to verify, dash. I don't need to verify anything, she snapped. I know fraud when I see it. And then she tore it in half. Right there. in front of the whole lobby, he felt something tighten in his chest. Not anger, something quieter than anger. Disappointment, the kind that settles deep and doesn't leave easily. "I asked for respect," he said, "not special treatment." She laughed. That laugh would replay in her mind for months afterward. Every night, on a loop. "Security," she called out. "Get him out of here." 2 guards started moving, and that's when the door opened. The regional director's name was Alan Cho. He'd flown in that morning for a surprise inspection. Standard practice. Nothing unusual. He stepped through the door mid-conversation with his assistant. Looked up, saw the man in the faded jacket standing at the counter. Torn paper on the floor in front of him, and every ounce of color left his face. Because Alan Cho knew exactly who that man was. Not from a photograph, not from a file, from a boardroom. 3 years earlier, the man standing at that counter, being escorted out by security, humiliated in front of an entire branch. That man had personally wired the capital that saved this bank during the crisis. That man sat on the board. That man was the largest private investor the institution had. "Sir," Alan said, his voice cracking slightly. "What happened here?" Silence. Total silence. The kind that presses against your ears. The manager turned, confused. "Do you know this man?" Alan didn't answer her. He walked straight past her, straight to Marcus. "Mr. Reed," he said, "I'm so sorry. Please, come with me." The name moved through the lobby like electricity through water. Reed. Marcus Reed. Employees who'd been standing frozen suddenly understood. The teller who'd rolled her eyes 10 minutes earlier. The guard who'd reached for Marcus's arm. The manager who'd laughed in his face. All of them, realizing at once exactly what they'd done. They moved to a private office in the back. Glass walls. A long table. The kind of room reserved for people who mattered. The manager followed, uninvited, still trying to explain herself. "I didn't know," she kept saying. "How was I supposed to know?" Alan Cho didn't look at her. He was pulling up files. Records. Verifying what he already knew in his gut. Marcus Reed. Board member since the crisis recovery. Majority stakeholder in the holding. Company that owned 40% of this branch's parent group. The $3 million check wasn't just legitimate. It was tied to a philanthropic fund Marcus ran personally. A fund the bank itself had agreed to help administer. The manager had just torn up a check from her own institution's biggest benefactor, in front of witnesses, on camera, while telling him he didn't belong. Alan pulled the security footage, watched in silence, watched the tear, watched the laugh, watched her say the words nobody in that building would ever forget. "People like you don't belong in my bank." He turned off the screen, looked at her. "You're suspended," he said, effective immediately, pending a full investigation. She started to argue, started to say it was a misunderstanding. Marcus raised a hand. Gently. "Wait," he said. Everyone turned. Alan expected him to demand something. A firing. A lawsuit. A headline. Instead, Marcus asked a question. Quiet. Steady. Aimed at no one and everyone at once. "If I wasn't who I am," he said, "would anyone here have defended me?" Nobody answered, because nobody could. That question sat in the room like smoke. Impossible to breathe past. The manager opened her mouth, closed it again, because she knew the answer. If Marcus Reed had just been a man in old clothes with no name on a board, no shares in the parent company, no history with the institution, he would have been walked out that door. No epaligi, no investigation, no suspensión. Just another person the world decided didn't matter. Marcus looked around the room, at the manager, at Alan, at the 2 guards still standing, near the doorway, unsure what to do with their hands. "My mother used to tell me something," he said. His voice dropped lower, not weaker, just quieter. She said, "Never measure a person's value by what they're wearing. Measure it by how they treat people who can do nothing for them." He let that sit for a moment. "Today," he said, "I was a man who could do nothing for anyone. No name, no title, just a check in a line at a counter." He looked directly at the manager. "And you tore it in half." She looked down, couldn't hold his eyes. "I dress like this," Marcus continued, "because I never wanted success to change who I am. I still remember what it felt like to have nothing. I still remember every door that closed on me. Before I had a name anyone recognized. He paused. Today, one of those doors closed again. Only this time, I had the power to open it back up. Alan Cho cleared his throat, still shaken. Mr. Reed, on behalf of this entire institution, I am deeply sorry. We will make this right. Whatever you need. Marcus nodded slowly. I don't want to pay out, he said. I don't want anyone fired just to make headlines. Disappear. He looked at the manager one more time. I want something that lasts longer than an apology. He laid out 3 conditions. Mandatory customer service and bias training. Not a single seminar. An ongoing program. Reviewed every year, tested against real outcomes. A community investment initiative funded in part by the bank itself. Aimed at the neighborhoods most often overlooked by institutions exactly like this one. And a simple policy posted at every branch, every counter, every teller window. Every customer treated with the same respect, regardless of what they're wearing, regardless of what they can do for you. Alan agreed before Marcus finished the sentence. The manager was placed on leave. The investigation confirmed what the footage already showed. Weeks later, she was let go. Not out of vengeance, out of consequence. Marcus never asked for that outcome directly. He didn't need to. Some things, once exposed to daylight, take care of themselves. The story could have ended there. A wrong corrected. A policy changed. A woman held accountable for a choice she made in a room full of witnesses. But Marcus wasn't interested in an ending that only fixed one branch, one policy, one afternoon. He wanted to know if anything had actually changed. So he waited. Months passed. The branch went through the training. Slowly, awkwardly, the way most institutions do when they're forced to look at themselves honestly. New protocols, new signage, a new manager, one who'd spent years working directly with underserved communities before stepping into the role. The community fund launched. Small business loans started reaching people who'd been turned away for years, not because of their credit, but because of what they looked like. Standing at a counter, Marcus watched from a distance. Didn't announce himself. Didn't attach his name to the headlines. He just watched. And then, one quiet Tuesday morning, he decided to see for himself. He wore the same jacket, the same faded jeans, walked into the same branch, stood in the same line. Nobody recognized him at first. The new manager was helping another customer near the window. An older woman dressed, plainly, counting exact change for a deposit. The manager treated her like she was the only person in the room. Patient, warm, unhurried. No judgment in her voice. No glance at the woman's clothes. Marcus watched, and something in his chest loosened just slightly. When it was his turn, a young teller waved him forward. Good morning, sir. How can I help you today? No hosetaschen. No second glance at his jacket. Just respect. Simple, uncomplicated respect. He almost smiled right there. He asked for a basic transaction. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that required anyone to prove themselves. The teller handled it exactly the way she would have for anyone else. Careful, attentive, kind. When he finished, he thanked her. She smiled. Have a great day. He walked toward the door. And that's when the new manager looked up, recognized him. Not from file, not from gossip, from memory, from a story that had reshaped this entire branch. She didn't rush toward him, didn't make a scene. She simply nodded, respectfully, the way she would to any customer walking out the door. He nodded back, and for the first time in a long while, Marcus Reed smiled. Not because anyone had recognized a billionaire. Not because anyone knew his name, his shares, his history with the institution. He smiled because, for once, none of that had mattered. They hadn't treated him well because of who he was. They treated him well because it was simply the right thing to do. Outside, the morning was ordinary. Cars passing. People walking to work, coffee in hand. Minds elsewhere. Marcus stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looked back at the building, thought about his mother, about empty cabinets in cold apartments and a boy who used to sweep floors for a man who saw something worth teaching. Thought about every door that had closed on him before anyone knew his name, and thought about the doors that were opening now for people who would never carry the weight he carried. People who would walk into that branch as nobody and leave treated like somebody, not because of a title, not because of a balance, because somewhere along the way, a room full of people had finally learned the one lesson his mother tried to teach him his entire life. Value isn't in what you're wearing. It's in how you treat the people who can do nothing for you. He turned and walked down the street. Same jacket, same boots, just a man blending into the morning. No cameras, no name recognition, just quiet dignity, walking forward the way it always should have been.